A single Fowler flap surface is fitted on each wing. The flap selector lever is on the left side panel and has 3 positions: up, mid, or down. The front selector lever is connected through to the rear cockpit selector lever by a torque tube underneath the panel. From the center of this torque tube, a teleflex cable takes the signal down to the flap control unit. The control unit supplies the electric motor. Let us look inside the control unit. The flap selector levers move the cam in the center of the control unit. This makes a microswitch to supply the electric motor. The motor drives the flaps into position, and when the microswitches arrive in the selected position, they open to break the supply to the motor. Let us look at that operation again. The selector lever in the cockpit moves the cam to close the microswitch contact. The microswitch supplies the electric motor. The motor moves the flap surfaces. The flap surfaces are connected by a feedback cable to the microswitch plate, which moves with the flaps. When the microswitch arrives in the selected position, its contacts open and the motor stops. So the electric motor drives a screw jack by teleflex cable. The screw jack drives the flaps into position. The screw jack drives the flaps into position. The flaps are connected by a feedback rod to the flap position bell crank inside the wing. The feedback rod moves the flap position bell crank. Inside the right wing, the right flap position bell crank moves the feedback cable, which signals the flap control unit to move the microswitch plate. So let us look inside that control unit again. The selector levers in the cockpit move the cam to signal the desired flap position. The cam closes the up or down microswitch to supply the electric motor, and the feedback cable moves the microswitch plate with the flap surfaces. When the desired flap position is reached, the microswitch comes off the cam and breaks the supply to the motor. If the feedback cable should break and the motor continue to run beyond the normal selected position, a travel limit microswitch on the left position bell crank will cut the supply to the motor. To prevent asymmetry from developing if the drive to one flap screwjack should fail, the flap position bell cranks are connected to each other by two cables. These cables run outboard around pulleys and then back across the center of the wing to the opposite position bell crank. Both cables run underneath the asymmetry detecting pulleys, which are in the center of the wing. These pulleys are pressed down by springs to tension the cables. If asymmetry should develop, the cable tension will lift the pulleys up against these springs to operate a microswitch to cut the supply to the flap motor. A potentiometer is connected to the left flap position bell crank to signal the gauge on the dash panel.